I was on ESPN.com and I noticed a story that came out yesterday. I guess it's technically a feature called, this is the headlining title, quote unquote, Then the Alligators Got Him. Inside Memphis Grizzlies star Ja Morant's 18-month downfall. I saw in the bylines two names that I recognized, Baxter Holmes and Tim Macmahon. Tim Macmahon I'm familiar with mostly because he is he's a regularly appearing guest on Brian Windhorst's podcast, which is like when I have gone through all of the other 12 to 15 podcasts I listen to regularly and I'm just being a complete robot and I need more podcast information, I go to Brian Windhorst's podcast, which is the single driest podcast on NBA basketball that you will find. I have to imagine it. I can't imagine it can get any drier. Very frequently, there's this guy, Tim Macmahon, on that show. In tonality, you can hear that he is a Southern white gentleman. He often exaggerates his Southernness for effect and charm. The other two guys on the show, Brian Windhorst and Tim Bontemps, are so milquetoast forgettably white that this guy, Tim Macmahon, by comparison, is supposed to be like the interesting, spicy, charming one of the crew. He's supposed to be the funny one. He thinks it's really, he thinks it's so funny at the beginning or at the end of each episode to say, adios, amigos. Like, that's his sign off, and he thinks it's just so fucking clever. He reminds me of every 45 to 50-year-old white dad I remember playing sports around Maryland. So, when I was playing sports, they were the other kids' dads. So, what I have noticed, before I even get to this Ja Morant piece, what I have noticed, Baxter Holmes, I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know who he was. I've seen his name before. I never read his stuff. So I Googled because before I even clicked the link to the article, to the piece, I wanted to know whose eyes are seeing Ja Morant in this piece. Because it's a double byline, which, first of all, I sniff at as a writer. But the two of them, quote unquote, wrote it together, whatever the fuck that means. I needed to know whose eyes are looking at this 24-year-old black man with, colorful dreads and a grill in his mouth. I needed to know. Baxter Holmes is a white guy. That's all I know about him. Didn't look any further. But here's more to know about Tim Macmahon. He covers most closely the Dallas Mavericks and the Memphis Grizzlies, which is unfortunate and problematic to me as someone who wants information about those two teams because there are particularly racially racially sensitive things around both of those teams, right? One of those teams has Ja Morant, who is a young black star in a bit of a tailspin because he hasn't been able to grow as fast as his star turn has taken place, right? He hasn't been able to mature fast enough in his decision making to keep up with how fast life is coming at him as he's turned from an unrecruited, player for a mid-major college to truly one of the 3 to 5 most marketable stars in the NBA. That is to say, whoever is covering this person, much like Stephen A. Smith was covering Allen Iverson 20 years ago, whoever this person is that's going to be covering this thing that's happening around Ja Morant closely, I would hope that person has the discernment, the empathy, the intelligence to follow that story and tell the story of what's happening with Ja Morant with some level of humanity. Because even outside of what's happening to a basketball player, which is why any of us are even noticing or care, this is happening to and around and because of a person. Separately, like I said, this guy Tim Macmahon also covers the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks have one of the two great white hopes in basketball, right? They have Luka Doncic, who is phenomenally talented. I'm a fan of how Luka Doncic plays. He is now starting to get a reputation for being a little bit of a coach killer and a headache, but by and large, I think he is still very much greatly loved and adored by the white sports media. And they have Kyrie Irving, who we have documented Kyrie Irving's behaviors on this show, but everybody knows who Kyrie Irving is. He is a spectacularly interesting, prodigious ball handler, shooter, scorer. He has a brain for basketball unlike any that I think we've seen before. It is unique. It is special. And he puts his foot in his mouth on like social justice issues, racial issues, religious issues, because he, as far as I can tell, I'm just to say what it is, like he cannot speak as precisely to the things that he wants to say and believe as he thinks he can. Said differently, I didn't even do a great job of it there. Like, he doesn't know how to articulate his points very well sometimes. He doesn't know exactly to say with precision what it is he's trying to say. He doesn't have the same dexterity of language that he has in basketball. And that's not to say either one of those two things is a greater signal of intelligence. Just one is this one and one is that one. Let's get back to the point. So what I'm saying is the person who's going to be covering those two people, they are going to play an important role in determining how the rest of us see those two people. Okay? This guy just wrote a lengthy, Tim McMahon co-wrote, whatever the fuck that means. Co-wrote a lengthy guys, what the fuck does co-write mean? Like, how did y'all do that? What does that mean? There's words on the page. Who wrote them? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I've quote unquote co-wrote some things, but what I know is like when you co-write, it means the harder working person sits down at the computer and writes the words, and the less harder working person or the busier person or the richer person like just kind of like skims the page and says like, "Ooh, put that thing there." But like that's not co-writing. Like that's one person writing and the other one bullshitting. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is Tim McMahon co-wrote or wrote or whatever we want to call it this piece about Ja Morant. It is long. There is some level of detail. And I bet that what he would say, because he's going to go on Brian Windhorst's show. He's probably going to go on a couple other podcasts. And he's going to say like, you know, I just put on my journalistic hat and I just told the story of like what's been going on with Ja Morant over the last 18 months. That's what he's going to say. But, and this is one of the points I want to make here. When you write, whether you are writing journalistically, whether you are writing fiction, whether you are writing nonfiction, when you write, just the same as when you open your mouth to speak, you are saying something, okay? You are, whether or not you think you are just taking an honest inventory of what's in front of you and just trying to, you know, put a mirror up to the world. I asked somebody showed me like a guy that I like working with a lot, very creative guy, showed me recently a docu-series that he is working on. He showed me like a clip of it. Maybe it was like 20 minutes long. Maybe it was less than that, 5 minutes. I don't know. I can't remember. When it was over, I asked him what I have gotten in the habit of asking people about their stuff when they show it to me, which is, what do you want this to say? And his response to me was, well, I really just want to hold up a mirror to something that is going on in New York City right now, and I want other people to determine what it says to them. I want them to process it. I hear that. But like, we're going to talk about voice at different moments of this show, and also we're going to record an ad on voice after this. Like, that is all well and good. But what you are writing on the page, what you are saying into a microphone, like how you see the world, you are saying something. You are, something in your brain, whether it's conscious or subconscious, is deciding which words go on the page and which ones don't. Which anecdotes are worth sharing and which ones aren't. Which quotes that you got from however many interviews you did are worth making, are worth including, and which ones aren't. I wrote a book. It had 20 interviews in it. I probably did over 100 interviews in the course of writing that book. I chose the ones that I wanted to go in the book because there was something I was trying to say outside of what all these other people were trying to say with their own points of view, their own stories, their own, reflections. Like, I wanted to say something. So, Tim McMahon, no matter how you represent this piece that is supposed to be journalistic when you go to your interviews, you are saying something about the Ja Morant experience. Now I'm going to talk about what that thing is that has been said, okay? That was a pretty good intro. First and foremost, the headline is, quote unquote, "Then the alligators got him." Inside Ja Morant's 18-month downfall. So already something is being said there, right? Something is being said, which is that someone has been pulled down by the crabs. Like someone, Ja Morant, is in a downward spiral and it's dark. I'm going to get into some places in this piece that stuck out to me. And by the way, this will not be a Ja Morant apology segment, I promise. So, couple quotes. One, that Tim McMahon, he did a lot of reporting. A lot is fuzzy, okay? Everybody inflates the amount of actual reporting they did when they talk about something that they made or wrote. Everybody does it. Everybody, if you had one conversation with your aunt, you include that as like, that was the 21st interview you did. Like, everybody does. So I don't know how much reporting he did or didn't do, but this is what he said. One guy, a team source on the Memphis Grizzlies, says of Ja Morant, and this is chronicling everything from Ja Morant, the 17-year-old who got beat up outside his house, his relationship with Devontae Pack, who I've talked about on this show, his dad sort of like turning from, the AAU dad into now trying to be like an aspiring star himself and throwing club nights and being courtside and getting into it with Shannon Sharp. It includes Ja Morant's mom getting into an altercation at a shoe store, and Ja Morant and his friends come and they intimidate somebody. Like, these are things that have already been chronicled. So this is not new reporting. The new reporting here is Tim McMahon talking to people around Memphis about how they have watched Ja Morant, the character, evolve since he got there as a 20-year-old a couple years ago. Now, they're saying who showed up was a kid and his dad. They were polite, they were friendly, they were kind, they were sweet to everyone. They were happy to be Memphis residents. They treated people well. What they're saying has become is an entitled, intimidating, rude, selfish, like prima donna star. That's what is being depicted in this story, because I bet most of y'all aren't going to read it. I would encourage you to read it yourselves, though, because now I'm saying something about what they're saying, and I want you to be able to say your own thing about it. Here's a quote from a team source. When you have a superstar, you make a deal with the devil. That's early in the piece. You sign up for them and everything that comes with them. Okay. A question I have written down on my notepad here. It is a question that I have been considering frequently as I listen to white sports media, Bill Simmons, Zach Lowe, Brian Windhorst, Tim McMahon, et cetera, et cetera. When I hear them mock NBA stars in their, for instance, social media behaviors, their quotes, their societal takes, their business decisions, their business cohorts. When I hear guys who I believe think they are speaking over the ears of somebody like us, listening to that, who think that people will miss that they are mocking, who think that people will not be able to point out the moments when they're being condescending. When I hear that, the question that comes back to me, when I hear Tim McMahon make jokes about dudes' haircuts and tattoos and et cetera, and I'm going to get into some of that in this piece, the question that comes back to me over and over, and I just want you to have it in your head as I read some parts of this piece, is like, you guys spend so much time thinking about and watching NBA basketball, but do you fucking like NBA basketball players? Do you like them? You don't seem to like them. You seem to want to mock them. You seem to be jealous of them. You seem to admire what they can do athletically, but it's almost like you feel like there's a quote I'm going to read later, which is that like every poor person thinks that they're just like a temporary misfortuned millionaire or something like that. Like, you guys think that the talent went into the wrong people's bodies. That's what it seems like. It seems like in your head, you're like, somebody like me should have gotten these gifts, because look at these idiots. They don't even know what to do with them. Keep that in your head. Do you even like NBA players? Because someone you talk to as a source characterized superstar basketball players as the devil. Like, you make a deal with the devil. You are making a deal with someone who now has you by the balls, and you guys don't trust them. You guys don't like them. I'll continue. Regarding a club incident with Ja Morant. Now, this is one of the snapshots that Tim McMahon is sharing here to give you an image of how the Ja Morant experience has evolved. And I think there's something funny in it. I'll see if you hear it. And by funny, I mean ridiculous. Let's see if you hear it. That business person recalled witnessing a verbal altercation where Morant and his associates had gotten very disrespectful to a man's wife. It got so bad that they actually started to threaten each other's lives. Okay, did you hear it? I'm going to read it again. That business person recalled witnessing a verbal altercation where Morant and his associates had gotten very disrespectful to a man's wife. It got so bad that they actually started to threaten each other's lives. But this is what I keyed in on. There's another term for a man's wife, and it's called a woman. But yes, indeed, like this is a snapshot that this guy is using to give a sense of Ja Morant being a thug. And again, like I know Ja Morant is moving crazy right now. That's not what I'm here to dispute. I'm just here to take a look at the lens through which he is looking at Ja Morant. Another guy in Memphis says he's the biggest star we've had since Elvis, said Joff Calkins, a longtime Memphis columnist. Now, I did not look up what Joff Calkins looks like. I don't know what lens he's looking at this kid through, but this is I think we can all corroborate this. Like I can't think of another big ass star from Memphis, like from or around the city of Memphis. I can't think of a single one. I think that's fair to say. Ja Morant is the biggest star in Memphis since Elvis. Where that leads me is to a second point, which is in this piece, there's an image of Ja Morant jumping extremely high. Looks like he's flying. He's about to dunk the ball with two hands. If you know what Ja Morant looks like, he is wispy. He is like 6'3", 170 pounds. He's long. He jumps so springy, and it quite literally looks in this image because his like arms are outstretched. His legs are behind him. He almost looks like Superman. Like he looks like he's flying. Now, this is a quick departure away from like how does Tim see Ja Morant? This is what I see in Ja Morant. It is so easy, obviously, to say, Ja Morant, get your life together, get your feet under you. What are you doing? You're going to ruin your life. I only want to point out that like those are points of view coming from people who will never experience what it is like to be distinctly special at something. To truly, like, he looks like he's flying. The crowd is going crazy. He's at home in Memphis, one of the greatest crowds in the world. There's 20,000 people in there. It's packed. That's 40 nights. That's 40 nights a year that he has that experience. Then he goes to other people's arenas, right? He sees strangers. He electrifies those crowds. He lights up those arenas. He sees women in the stands that he's never seen before, okay? He's 24. He's single. He sees celebrities. When he goes to the Laker game, Shannon Sharp is sitting courtside, right? This guy is like, the piece is exploring how this guy came in as an everybody, as an everyman, and he looks up and he's fucking Justin Bieber. How, like, what experience do you have in your own life, people who have judgments for Ja Morant, to apply to what he is experiencing? When has anyone ever wanted to look at you? When has anyone ever cared what you do at your job, right? Like, I'm not even saying necessarily that you're wrong. It's just for me to ask you to explore the experience. Like, I'm asking you to explore where your theories are coming from and how they're being devised. I'm asking you to explore what things that you actually know are you taking and concocting to apply to Ja Morant's experience. I would also add, Ja Morant is exhibiting, in my opinion, the behaviors of someone who is like on a high. Now, I'm not saying that he has said, and this is quoted in this story, he is asked, do you think you have an alcohol problem? And he says twice, emphatically, like, no, I don't think so. I'm paraphrasing. Now, that probably has no correlation or correspondence with whether or not he actually has an alcohol problem, but like, who knows if he has one? I don't know. I certainly don't know. What I can say is like, Dax Shepard has talked about this. I believe Dax Shepard is the person who made me aware of this first, but I've learned it from other addicts. I've seen it in performing addicts before, like musicians, comedians, rock stars. You go on that stage. First of all, it takes your whole life is a kilter. Like your whole life is offset because you have to be at your peak at 7:30 at night or later. So your whole life is off. Like you are now nocturnal, right? Your circadian rhythm is all fucked up. You got to do whatever you have to do, whether that's changing your eating intake schedule, like the supplements that you take, your sleep schedule, your entire life has to be changed. If you got kids, you got to do some weird shit to be awake at the right hours for your kids and for your job, and to be up, for people to be looking at you with the expectation of spectacle, okay? You have to go do that, and then for 2 hours, while you are absolutely on a high of adrenaline and whatever else you put in your body to be there, now you got to walk off that stage or off that court and go back to life, right? You like, that's an impossible expectation. That's why people get high. Like, that's why every rock star comedian has had a drug problem. That's why every rock star musician who has who has been out on that stage, done the big thing, had the pyrotechnics, and then walks out and is expected to be human, that's a roller coaster that most people can't just like live through. And that's what I think I see in Ja. Okay, I've gotten away from the point. I'm gonna say one more thing and then I'm gonna move on and we're gonna get off of Ja. But this is sort of the main point here. And this is what has to do with lens for me, right? If you just look at right is just a part of what I say now. I'm just accepting it. If you look at Ja Morant, I think it is easy for Tim McMahon to see what Tim McMahon seems to see there. He, throughout this piece, he is using the motif of Ja Morant as someone who thinks he is a rapper, like someone who thinks he's living like a rapper. The piece, that little clip where Calvin Butts is saying at the beginning of the song Thuggish Ruggish Bones, we're not against rap, we're not against rappers, but we are against those thugs. So the whole motif that's being used here by Tim McMahon is like Ja Morant thinks he's a rapper. He even goes as far, and this part was really ridiculous to me, he goes as far to say, quote unquote, while Morant was away, the team made changes. The rap soundtrack played during the team's layup lines was replaced by R&B songs, prompting Jaren Jackson Jr. to playfully complain to the locker room post-game about being forced to, quote unquote, warm up to love songs. The pregame hype video played before starting lineup introductions was edited to remove lyrics of the Trippie Redd song Psycho, playing only the bass thumping beat. The original version of the video showed fast-paced highlights, beginning with a spectacular Morant dunk over an opposing big man during the hook of the song. And then he goes on to include the whole fucking hook of the song in his piece. Going dumb, going crazy, going crazy, going dumb, going crazy, going dumb, yeah, going crazy, going dumb, out my mind, chasing dollar signs, sipping red wine. We all losing time, bae, don't lose your mind, lose your mind. In Trippie Redd's music video for the song, he's partying in a strip club, throwing cash that covers the floor, a scene reminiscent of Morant's night at Shotgun Willie's. Okay, I've said enough here. I'm not going to take up a whole lot more time with this. But in paraphrasing, this isn't why I do this particular job. And by this particular job, I mean like very obsessively, prolifically, and I mean prolific by the actual definition, which just means a whole lot of volume, like storytelling, writing, podcasting, media creation. Like, this isn't why I do it, because why I do it is impulse. I love it. I enjoy it. I love the flow of like, make something, share it, watch people respond to it. I'm obsessed. It's what I do. My friend asked me, what are you going to do to celebrate when you get to 20,000 followers on Instagram? And I said, I don't know. I'll probably up my ad budget on Instagram for a few days. Like, that's it. I don't want to go have a steak dinner. I don't want to go on a trip. Like, I want to do this because this is what I love to do. But that's not why I love it, is not why it's important. It's important because Tim McMahon was always going to see Ja Morant this way. He compares him to Trippie Redd, a rapper, much in the same way that he was like calling that woman somebody's wife. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not a person. That's this thing. That's somebody's wife. She's not her own identity and her own individual. Like, Ja Morant, Trippie Redd, these are fucking thugs. We got to get these, like, these are thugs. And he's not going as far as to say, we got to get them out of here or they're ruining our country or whatever. But, like, when you write something and you are so specific as to use a rapper motif, rap lyrics, strip club montages, etc., like, you are saying something. I think the last sentence of the piece is somebody he met at like a Memphis barbecue spot or something, saying like Ja Morant thinks he's a rapper or whatever. Like, you are supposing that there is something innately negative or bad about a rapper, which is, I can read between the lines, dog. Like, that is to suppose that there is something innately bad about honestly, somebody like me, somebody like my friends, somebody who wears their hair a certain way, who talks a certain way, who likes to go to the strip club, who likes to eat certain foods, who feels a certain way, who moves a certain way, who walks a certain way. Like, you're saying that about us. You're saying that Ja Morant something's fucked up with Ja Morant because he listens to Trippie Redd and acts like him. Now you're saying something's wrong with Trippie Redd because he looks a certain way and acts a certain way. How many extensions over does it go before it gets to me and the next person, the next person? Like, fuck you. That's what I'm saying. Like, all of this is to say, I can read, dog. I said I couldn't read because I couldn't read my sister's Babysitter's Club's books, but I can read this.